Hi guys. I wrote a blog, I wrote a post on my blog clockworkriot.com about how to make golden glyphs, and a lot of people, apparently, I've been talking about glyphs for so long, I'm not sure why this suddenly got a lot of people interested, but it did, and that's awesome. But I'm getting a lot of follow-up questions of people who who are new to glyphs and don't really understand a lot of the things that I talk about. So I'm going to do a video right now that's entirely, start to finish how I do glyphs. Now, I'm recording this as I'm narrating as I record, so I'm sorry for all the ums and pauses, but we're going to do this in real time so you can follow along, and so that's why there's all the ums and pauses and stuff, and why this isn't super nicely edited. But you don't care how I edit my videos, you care how I make golden glyphs. So, we're on my scribe, which is my shaman, and let's get started. So, the first thing you need to do is know how to use TSM. If you don't already know how to use TSM, you're way far behind. Don't worry, you can catch up. I'm actually going to be making some TSM2 guide videos, but until they come out, and I'm just going to try and be more thorough than what's out there right now. But for now, you can check out Fat Lutz's guide videos. They'll be linked in the comments or possibly on the screen somewhere. But that'll get you some basics on how to use TSM. I'm assuming you already know the basics of TSM by the time you're watching this video. So, we're there. So now we're in TSM. And so I have my glyphs split up into two groups, common and rare. The only difference between these is that the rare ones are the ones that were added in 5.4. So they're from the world drop patterns or from specific timeless isle patterns. So they're the new glyphs basically. I did not take into account the value of the glyph in regards to whether it's one that people need for PvE or PvP, or if it's a vanity glyph or anything like that. It's just if they're new, they're in the rare one. If they're not new, they're in the common one. And every single glyph in the game that I can make, I'm still missing a few of the 5.4 glyphs. But everything that's in the game that I can make is in one of these two lists. A lot of people have asked me, do you, I can actually make this bigger, I think. Oh, it doesn't really help you guys see anything better. But anyways, people ask me, well, do you bother with the trainer glyphs? Yes, I do, and I'll explain why once we get to crafting. But I make every glyph, even the ones that people don't consider valuable. And so all the glyphs are in there, and so now we have operations on these, of course, as we all know with the new trade skill master. So, crafting. We're going to start with crafting first. Now, let's go over how I decide what I'm going to craft with. You'll notice, once I find my glyphs, I have one group of crafting all glyphs. So the difference between the rare and the common groups for me are all about pricing. It has nothing to do with crafting. Crafting's always the same for both. And that is, I make 18 of every glyph. Why 18? Because as far as inventory space goes, there's no difference between having 3 of a glyph and having 20 of a glyph. They're all going to stack. So I like to be as close to 20 as possible, but sometimes something goes wrong, I misclick, or I forgot to check my mail and I didn't realize I had a couple more of something, and so that can create a little bit of overflow beyond 20, which does waste space, so that's why I actually craft a little bit under 20, but anything works here for you, anything here can work for you, but that's why I do 18 of each. You'll notice I have no set minimum profit. Let's talk about glyph pricing really quick. Here's the situation with glyphs. Glyph value has nothing to do with what you make it from. Herbs are so cheap that if you are going to, even the most expensive herbs or the rarest herbs, they're still so cheap and plentiful that if you base the value of a glyph on what you crafted it from, you're going to be selling yourself short in almost every single situation. Glyphs are worth so far above their materials cost that setting a minimum profit based on material cost, which is what people usually do, does not make any sense. So then why not just put a static minimum profit, right? Why not just say, hey, why not just craft every glyph that sells for at least 50 gold or something like that? And that's not a bad idea, but I have a better idea. Essentially, the way that we want to work in glyphs here is we're going Walmart style on glyphs. We want to sell everything and we want to sell a lot of it. And so the way that we're able to manage such a large inventory and keep it up is by keeping our our logistics time and all that stuff down. We want to not have to spend a couple, even if it's just a couple minutes a day, having to do that every day is not very fun. We want to keep the amount of attention we have to pay to this market to an absolute minimum. This is a very hands-off market once you get into it. And so the reason that I have no minimum profit is because, generally speaking, prices are going to fluctuate. A glyph that sells for 40 gold today might sell for 300 gold tomorrow, or vice versa. And so if you craft based on a certain minimum profit, you're going to craft some while not crafting others. And then when those prices shift, the next day you've got all these glyphs that now sell for 40 gold and they're under your threshold, so you're not posting them anyways. But you've also got all these gaps where there's these glyphs that are selling for 400 gold, but because they were only selling for 40 yesterday, you didn't craft any of them, so now you have to go craft some more if you want to sell those. So what I do is I don't have any minimum profit, because that means that I have everything on hand. If a price fluctuates and it's suddenly where I want it to be, I've got that under control. I am ready for that. If the price drops, that's okay. And we'll go over that a little bit more in pricing, but basically if the price drops, I won't post it anymore, but I still have it for when the price rises again. So that's why I use no minimum profit, and why I recommend you do too. It can be kind of painful in the beginning when you're building up your stock to craft so many glyphs, and you might be thinking, but if I craft with a minimum profit, then I'm going to put these mats into something that's more valuable, blah, blah, blah. No, we're building an infrastructure here. This isn't about today's profit. This is about the profit over the entire next year. So start thinking that way. So that's why we craft 18 of everything. And that's why we have no minimum profit. And that's usually what I get the questions about. But anyways, and then whether or not I craft based on the value of the glyph. So all of that has been covered now. So let's make some glyphs. I already have most of my stuff made up, so I don't really have to do much, but I'm going to do a little bit just to show you how I do my shopping. Hold on just a moment. Alright, the dangers of recording and narrating at the same time. Gotta mute and clear my throat. Anyways, so let's make some glyphs. So there's definitely some missing, and right now it's going to try and stock me up to 18 of everything, so apparently I'm missing quite a few Glyph of Pestilence. So basically I've got a lot of glyphs that I need to make. So I guess we're going to go a little bit over TSM, but you hit gather, start gathering, you can close this now, and head to the auction house. So once we're here, what I need the most of is Azure Pigment, which make Ink of the Sea, which does not surprise me, because that's what I didn't have in my backstock. So now here is how I determine my minimum price. Now this is not the same as minimum profit for crafting. We're now moving into talking about the minimum cost, or the minimum price that I post at, which, if you have listened to me, I throw out the number 18 gold a lot, and I throw out the number 20 gold a lot. I'll explain those right now. 18 gold is the most I ever pay to craft a glyph. I typically spend significantly less, but I will never ever pay over 18 gold. So I know that as long as I sell for a little bit over 18 gold, I've made a profit. Might not be much profit, but it's still a profit. I haven't lost money. Now, the 20 gold is because that's 2 gold over my crafting cost, my maximum crafting cost. And so that's usually where I will wall at, is somewhere between 20 and 30 gold. However, when I'm not walling, of course, I want to make as much gold as possible. So I have a significantly higher minimum price at that point. It's 55 gold, which I just chose because it's an arbitrary number. But the important thing for what we're doing now is to know that 18 gold number. So there's 3 ink that go into every glyph. And then there's some parchment, but the parchment cost a couple copper, so I don't even factor them in because it's such a small amount. So basically, if I pay 6 gold or less per ink, then I'll be hitting my crafting cost goals. And so how do I do that? Some people are like, well, how do you know how much pigment or how much ink is going to come out of one stack? It's like, well, the bottom line is, I don't know. I let TSM do all the math for me because I'm not good at math, and it'll do it for you really easily. So we've searched the auction house for everything that can mill into the ink I'm searching for. So now you'll check this column, price per target item. So that's the price per ink that you're trying to make. So you'll see this one's 3 gold, 33 silver, 33 copper. So that's how much that ink's going to cost. So if I could maintain this price at all times, I'd be crafting glyphs for closer to 10 gold. So basically, I buy out anything up until this reads over 6 gold. So I'll buy everything from the top and down. I don't pay attention to this percent of target value at all. Basically, when you have your actual crafting queue up, you'll see this number down here, estimated cost, estimated profit, and that percentage column, when you've actually searched the auction house, reflects information there. If you maintain a percent target value of under 100%, then that math should work out. However, I prefer to go off, when dealing in glyphs specifically, I prefer to work off price per target item and completely ignore this. So, and note that price per item is price per item for the actual herb. So this is 20 gold per stack on this adder's tongue. Don't pay attention to price per item because we don't care about the price of the herbs. We care about the price of the end result, which is the ink itself. So I have a macro to buy out. It's really easy to make, but I'll put it in the comments. But I just get to spam that. So many herbs, that is a good thing. I'm gonna run out of money here because I didn't send any over. Okay, I ran out of money. So I've got what I need, but basically if I had sent my gold over properly, I would just have bought anything up to the 6 gold price. So, as you can see, I'm getting some herbs in, and for some reason TSM Destroying is showing up. Whoa, that is not what I meant to bring up. TSM Destroy? How do I get that? I rarely... You know what? We're gonna go lazy style and just reload my UI, and then it should pop up anyways. But basically we need the TSM Destroy plugin module thing, and I want my window up so I can hit my button. There it is. Okay, TSM Destroying. There, I know that there's a command to bring that up, but I didn't want to try and figure out what it was. Don't feel obligated to put it in the comments. I'm going to look it up by the time you see this video. So now we've got this TSM Destroying window, which all of you TSM folks are probably familiar with. Now here's the cool thing. You can actually macro this, and I'll put this macro in the comments as well, but you can macro this so that you just have to hit a button to do it, which is pretty cool. But the really cool thing about this is you can use Consortium Key Sender, which allows you to play other games while milling. So that way you don't really have to sit here and hit the number, your 1 key all the time. You can be playing Diablo 3, which is what I usually do, browsing Reddit, doing whatever you want to do. So I'm not going to make you watch me mill all of this. I just wanted to show you how that works out. So let's make some ink though, really quick. We're just going to walk through an entire process of making some glyphs. That's why I'm doing this. I have more than enough glyphs right now to handle what I'm about to do, but if I say we're going to start from the beginning of the process and go all the way to the end, I guess I better do every step. Okay, I've made a little bit of ink. Good enough. Now, when you go to the ink trader, I highly recommend not letting Gathering buy your stuff for you, because frequently it will use my Ink of Dreams to buy really common cheap ink, and then I'm kind of screwed for the more expensive ink. So I actually do that stuff manually. Let's get 7 of that, because that's how many I've got. And a couple parchment, which I already had. So now that I've got some of the materials, enough to make some glyphs, I can click on stuff and it will make my glyphs. So now I've got some glyphs, and of course, I'd be doing this on a much grander scale if I were actually doing this. And so my bags would be filled with glyphs by the time I finish that. By the way, you can macro that Create All button in TSM as well, so you can continue to craft. I have a macro for that as well. Once again, will be in the comments. So then once your bags are full, you'd go over to here and you should have a mailing operation set up to mail your glyphs. Where's my operations? Mailing. So I have a mailing operation that sends all of my glyphs to my glyph selling character. So then I just have to go over here, hit the Mail Selected Groups button, and it mails all of my glyphs over. That would look much more impressive if I was mailing more than one glyph. So Now, in the entire process, that's technically done. Now, if you're new to Glyphs, you may not know this, but you should be using your Starlight ink to make like shoulder inscriptions to get a little bit of extra cost out of that. You know, those don't go to waste; those are valuable. So make sure you make some shoulder inscriptions with that. Okay, I'll mill that all later. You guys don't have to watch me do that. So the scribe is done. So now comes the selling part, which is fun. Now here's where it gets rather interesting. There's a big difference between walling and selling normally. Now I'm going to go over walling very quick in a nutshell, but there's a comment that I will also be linking on the screen here right now. So if you want to know more about walling, click the comment that's on, or click the annotation on the screen right now, because that's going to give you a lot more information about walling. But basically, just so we're on the same page as far as what walling is posting a significant amount of glyphs for a very low price in order to do some form of market manipulation. Usually it's to drive out competitors. And that's actually the step that I'm about to start. Today is the day that I'm starting a wall, which is why I decided to do this video now. But if I weren't going to do a wall right now, I'll show you my setting. Oh, I already set them up for walling. Oh well. Anyway, so like I said at the beginning of the video, I have these common. Let's just close all this stuff down so that we're just looking at our glyphs. So I have a common and a rare group, and the only difference between these, well, I'll go through all the settings for posting. So I have a post cap of 2. That's my wall settings. Let me tell you what. Don't pay attention to what's on the screen right now. I'll tell you what my normal selling. My normal selling is a post cap of 1. If you're not going to be on the auction house again all day, you might want to consider 2. But so basically, you want to make sure that you have some up there at all times, while not completely flooding the auction house. Because remember, with glyphs, you're already going to be spending a lot of time taking these in from the mail if you have to cancel or when they expire, which you'll do one or the other with them, or ideally they'll sell, but for most of them, you're going to be getting them coming back. And it doesn't sound like much to move from post cap of 1 to 2, but when you consider that's going to double the amount of time you're spending on the auction house every day, it's actually a pretty big deal. So when I'm normally posting, I post the post cap of 1 in a duration of 12 hours. The reason I do 12 hours is because if you are posting at the same price as someone else, in other words, if you have someone whitelisted, whoever's is going to expire soonest is the one that appears first in the list. So I have players whitelisted for reasons which are not relevant to this video, and so I have a duration of 12 hours. You could do longer durations to keep them from expiring, but generally speaking in glyphs, well, the reason you can do longer durations is because the deposit cost is very low, so it's not really going to cost you a lot to do that. However, in glyphs, you're almost always going to be canceling a glyph just because eventually you're going to get undercut. It's sad, but it's true. So if you're on most servers, you're going to get undercut eventually, so having a 48-hour duration doesn't really give you anything unless you're actually not going to be on the auction house again for 48 hours. But if you're going to be on within the next 12 hours, then do a 12-hour post time. Post cap of 1 to save yourself time when it comes back. Bid percent 100% because I don't know of anyone who ever bids on glyphs. That's just silly. So if I were posting normally, my minimum price would probably be around 55 to 60 gold. This is just a good price for me. It's approximately 3 times my maximum crafting cost. So that's pretty good to me as a minimum. My normal price is somewhere around 325 gold on my common glyphs. Now, the way I came up with that is because it sounded good. That's really all there is to it. There are players who will never pay more than 100 gold per glyph. That's fine. I know they're out there. That's their prerogative. But the bottom line is that I've found through significant amount of price, experimentation, is the vast majority of players are willing to spend that much on a glyph, but they're not willing to spend that much more on a glyph. So somewhere between the 55 to the 325 range has been where I've gotten the most sales. I have experimented with higher prices, but once it kind of starts getting up to almost half 1,000, up to around 500 gold, people kind of start freaking out. It happens for sure. you know, there are servers where glyphs are always 400 gold plus and great for that server, but in my experience, people kind of start freaking out when they're like, that's half 1,000 gold. I'm not gonna do that. So that's why I like my prices where they are. And then the rare glyphs I add 100 gold to, just because I typically have less competition, and because more people tend to want them because they're either valuable for actual utility or because they're fun and cool and vanity. So that's why, and less competition because of how they're learned and the fact that they're new. So that's where my normal prices are. And then make sure that when below your minimum, when posting normally, you either have it to post at normal price or post at maximum price. Or, you know, basically anything but do not post. Just don't choose don't post items, which is the default, so make sure you fix that. But don't choose do not post, and I'll tell you why once we get to the actual guild bank situation. So we will do that when we get to the guild bank situation. Right now I have it set up for walling. Walling is a little bit different because it's not about getting sales, it's about keeping prices down. So at that point in time, duration goes up to 48 hours. Post cap goes up to 2 in order to deter people from buying out all of my glyphs to repost. Because you know, the more glyphs you have, the less likely that's going to happen, but you also have to balance it against what I previously mentioned about how going from 1 to 2 doubles the amount of time you're going to be opening your mail. So, and that's actually quite a bit when you're dealing with as many items as there are glyphs in the game. So I use a post cap of 2 because that also kind of helps us though, in that buying out 1 of every glyph in the game is at 25 gold is not too bad. Buying out 2 is twice as much gold. So that's why I like 2 instead of just 1. 1 looks easy to buy out. 2 kind of starts getting a little bit scary. Once you get up to 5, it's like, oh my god, that's never going to happen. So, and then my walling prices right now are 25 gold all across the board. The reason I do this is because by having everything at the same price, I'm not going to ever undercut anything. Which reminds me, cancel undercut auctions, check. So, because even when walling, like some people will still cancel their, they'll have a range in which they wall. So say 20 gold, minimum 30 gold, normal and max. But that still gives you all that work that you have to do to cancel your auctions and just to be the lowest between the 20 and 30. The entire point for me is just to have the auctions up. So I really don't care what's going on. The 25 gold is my, sweet spot area. So that's why all of these are here. So how do I get the glyphs onto the auction house? Well, that uses, we're not gathering anymore, so we can close that. I'm using a guild vault setup. In a previous video, I talked about doing glyphs with your bags in guild bank. Technically, it's not viable anymore. Because there's too many glyphs in the game to do that. We don't have the bag space, even with maximum glyph bags, to cover all the glyphs in the game. Now, you could consider not, figuring out what the 20 or 30 least valuable glyphs are for you, and just not crafting those. That's entirely possible. However, I've found it significantly easier to just use a guild bank and use the AH shortfall setup. So, basically, as you've seen, I had it set up so that it's going to post 2 of every glyph in the auctioning settings. And I sold some bronze tubes. And I don't have any glyphs on the auction house right now. I've got a few in my bags, but most of them, as you can see, are in the guild bank. So what do? I go to the auctioning tab of the bank UI. This comes from the warehousing plugin of TSM. And technically you could deselect all groups if you're managing a lot of markets. I don't have to because this character only does glyphs. But basically make sure your glyph operations are set, and then move AH shortfall to bags. And now what it's going to do is it's going to, my auction house post cap is 2. So anything underneath 2, it's going to refill up to 2 on the auction house. So it's going to start slowly not too slowly, I've seen much slower. It's going to, over time, take all of these glyphs out of the bank. It will take because of the size of my bags, it will take a few steps for sure. But basically you pull all of them out in this way, go post them. Once the post scans are done, you come back, pull more out, and don't worry, it'll feel like you just keep pulling and pulling, but eventually it will say done. And that's when you know that you've got all your glyphs out and onto the auction house. So now you've got 2 of every glyph posted. This is if you're walling. I'm not saying this is the normal way to post, but now you've got 2 of every glyph posted at 25 gold per glyph. And so now you just wait, and every 2 days come open your mail and repost on the auction house. And you just do that over and over and over again, and that is how you glyph wall. However, the only place that the wall actually matters is here in the posting that we're doing now. Everything before this posting setup is how works just as well for normal posting. And this is also, you know, for using the guild bank and everything is also how I post normally. I just don't do 2 of them and my prices are higher. But the actual concept is the same. The prices are just different, and post cap and duration, which goes to 12, which we've already gone over. So that is about it as far as what I wanted to say about glyphs. I can't imagine you have any more questions because I went over pretty much everything. So if you do have any questions, you can put them in the comments, but I can't promise I'll answer them because honestly, I don't have anything else I could possibly say about it, but I'll do my best if you have questions. So, thanks so much for watching, guys. If this video helped you, please be sure to like and subscribe, and check out clockworkriot.com, which is my website linked in the comments below, and I just have a lot of posts about making gold in World of Warcraft there. So, thank you so much for hanging out, and have a great day.